We are here with babies. Welcome to Good Morning Mama. This is Amanda Sellers, as you guys know. I'm Chelsea Rizzo, but this is Amanda Sellers, the Sellers Dozen. She is a mama of 12. Oh, that number is insane. You just gave birth to your fourth set of twins. You were on our podcast before talking all things social impact in ministry, and all your missionary trips, which is so cool. And we've done so much in that short amount of time. I was looking back and I think it was like 6 months ago. No, it had to have been, yeah, it was 6 months ago. You were like freshly pregnant, I think, or did we even know? Did we know?
I don't remember.
I don't.
I don't remember.
And um, and we have done so much in that time. You have gotten your course completed where you went through and talked all things lactation, pregnancy, nutrition. You have written a cookbook that is set to get published for pregnancy that talks about all things benefits of all of like your nutritional benefits through trimester. You spent the time and talked all about that. You have the smoothie recipes and all kinds of immunity boosting elixirs. I gave birth to Cora. We have done so much. Your clothing line is active. Like we've accomplished quite a bit, and I'm so honored to have you on here. I know that you haven't told your birth story completely yet. It is a very interesting one. Have all of your births been a home birth?
No, so my first birth was a cesarean, actually, in the hospital.
Really?
Yeah, failed induction that turned cesarean at 41 weeks. So my next pregnancy was the twin girls. And since they were about 15 months apart, we just did a repeat cesarean for them. And then I was like, this is the worst thing ever. I want to have no more cesareans at all. So
Wow. And so hospitals typically won't deliver VBACs, right? They have
right.
a hard time with that,
Yes.
especially with twins. So is that why you made the decision to do home births?
Yeah, so the very next
Wow.
pregnancy was also twins. So we ended up just kind of a fly into the hospital as fast as possible birth story with them. I should tell that one. That one was crazy too. But basically, I accidentally showed up at the hospital 9 centimeters dilated, and we got to deliver the twins naturally because of that. Otherwise, they were like
Wow.
preparing for a cesarean. So that was our first round in like learning how to coordinate with a hospital who wasn't ready for you to come birth twins, right? And so we learned
Yeah.
a lot from that one and used every single one of those tools this time around in the hospital again.
So tell us a little bit about that then, because that is interesting. So I've been induced for all of my births. So I
Okay.
don't really know of like a surprise. I don't have any of those like waiting for it
Yeah.
moments, but I'm curious and almost a little bit envious because I wanted to have that moment of like when your water breaks. Um, but I didn't. So how did that go? And how do they, that has to be totally different for twins too, if they're like completely not prepared.
Yeah. So yeah, we had originally had a doctor who was supportive of a trial of labor after cesareans, but changed up his mind at the very end of my pregnancy. So 36 weeks, he was like, yeah, come on in for a cesarean after the whole plan had been to try natural delivery. I really didn't think he thought I was going to make it that long, but all of my pregnancies, twin pregnancies, all of them have gone to term. I've not had any NICU babies, thank God. And so we've just been waiting for spontaneous labor on all of them except for the girls, which we kind of just went in for a checkup and they're like, why don't we take them today? And so that's kind of how that one worked out. But yeah, so with our first boy set, our second set of twins, we had a plan with the doctor. And the doctor changed his mind. And then I fired him and switched doctors at 37 weeks pregnant with twins.
No way.
And no, you gotta go outside, okay? It's such a beautiful day. I'm so glad everyone's outside. Um, so we met another doctor. He said, "Yeah, sure, you can try and just show up here." And his practice was 2 hours away from where we lived. So we showed up, and he had gone on vacation that week. So my water broke. It was an hour until our babysitter got there for the kids, so we couldn't even leave to go to the hospital yet. And so we rushed and rushed and rushed, which there was a million delays, but all of them ended up with me like actively in labor by the time we got there. So it was clearly God's plan. It was just really stressful at the time.
Oh
But
my gosh, I can't believe. So for me, with each of the kids, so we used to live in Boca, which is 2 hours from Vero Beach. It's a 2 hour drive. And I had Kaya in Boca. She was a high risk delivery. She was transverse and the whole time. And then they had wanted to do a C-section. They had wanted to do an induction. They did an inversion. It was a whole thing. But I didn't. I fell in love with my doctor. Then we moved, so I kept my doctor 2 hours away for both of these babies. So I would do the traveling, and that was my fear. I ended up moving all of my kids down to my mother-in-law's to Boca because I wanted to make sure that I didn't have like the surprise and no babysitting and having to travel 2 hours. Like that was really scary. So I fully get that. And I've never met another mom that went through that. Like they're like, no, I find a doctor locally. Yeah, I'm the nut job that doesn't.
yeah, no, that's exactly why I took everything that I knew about birth and what I wanted for my birth experience and transitioned over to home birth. But the hospital there, that experience, we literally showed up and they were like, "Yeah, no, you cannot have a natural delivery. We'll prepare you for a cesarean." And so it was like a battle back and forth. My husband is like fighting for me. My midwife shows up and she's like advocating for me. And it was just this whole thing. Let me pass off baby man really quick.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a whole thing. It was a whole, but the babies came out perfectly and they're amazing. God knew what he was doing. So at that point, we just literally were like, okay, why don't we do this at home where I can just go back to bed? Like I don't have to do anything. I don't have to meet any nurses. I don't have to anything. I can just have babies and just go to sleep. And so we literally had to plan though. The VBACs in that state were illegal for a licensed midwife to attend.
No way.
Kind of finagled a little bit of my birth situation for that because I didn't want her to get in trouble, but I also wasn't ready to like birth unassisted yet. I didn't want to like try that. So we actually planned an out-of-state birth because I was right there by the Arkansas state line. And so we had it all planned for me to drive out to Missouri as soon as like labor started. And if we happened to like not make it, then we just birth at home. And so God had it all planned out. That's exactly what happened. When my water broke with him, he was out 15 minutes later. Like there was no driving anywhere.
Way. So no like big bathing tub and all of that, like because that's the way that I imagine an at-home birth, right? Like the movies make it so scary. Yeah. And I think we've been culturally like very much conditioned to believe that home births are, no offense, for the crazy out there people, right? And it's extremely dangerous. I don't think that about you at all, but I can I can say that it is scary for me to think that I would have a birth outside of the hospital. But if you think about all of the rules, regulations, all of the reasons why these doctors make certain decisions, and my husband's a huge advocate for saying they want to keep you there because it's a business. The hospital is a business. The doctors are a business. Like they need patients in beds, and they're going to keep you there as long as they can. And we've experienced that in all of our births. It's a constant bone of contention. My husband's like, my baby's fine. My wife's fine. We want to get home. My baby's fine. My wife's fine. Release us. And it's a constant like battle back and forth, but the rules are very insane. So if you think about it, having an at-home birth does make a lot of sense if you know what you're doing. But that I think we're conditioned to be nervous about it when it's the most natural thing that our body can prepare us for.
Yes. So because of that, I mean, everything you're saying is totally true. And so that was why I had initially intended to birth in a hospital with my babies and all of that. I have had enough experiences though that it became like I'm more scared to birth in a hospital. Like every time I go in a hospital, someone's trying to cut me open. So like
Right.
that was scarier to me than trying to birth at home.
Totally.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so your births went smoothly like you got one that went smoothly at home.
Yes.
Now you are
he was like literally on my bedroom. We birthed him on my bedroom floor with like my husband catching him. Like it was an awesome experience and kind of a whirlwind. And it like was really empowering. I was like, oh, well, that wasn't that hard. Like,
yeah.
And then like I was hoping for, I just climbed in bed with my baby and I didn't have to drive anywhere. And it was amazing. It was really amazing.
That is amazing. And so how do you, when you are at home, before we get into the full birth story, like how do you prepare for like, do you have to do like the hot towels? Did he cut the placenta? Like all of that stuff that I know nothing about. How do you manage those things at home?
You just prepare for them. Like you've got 9 months to get ready. So you just know all of the things. Chris also did specific training that time we thought it would probably go fast since that was our baby number 8. It was the 6th baby I had birthed because my oldest 2 are adopted.
Okay.
So we had singleton twins, both in the hospital, both cesarean, and then twins again in the hospital, but naturally. And then my first home birth, which was a whirlwind. My husband caught him on the like bedroom floor. And then the next one, it was like we had time and planning and all of those things. So with the first home birth, Chris had training. We knew what to expect, and we had a midwife on call. And so she followed up right after the birth and did all of the check stuff. I think Chris cut the cord. I don't remember. That one was, like I said, a whirlwind. But we had
it's almost like you have a course about this. It's almost check
it out.
That's crazy. So you have a midwife that you lean into that comes and like takes care of everything. So you still get all of the medical care. Cause I think that's what a lot of people think is that you just have a baby and you like crawl in a hole and you know what I mean? Like people don't understand.
That's how I describe it too. I'm like, you just get No, there is a whole like but it's totally different than having like a circulation of nurses who are on different shifts. It's totally different. Like you have a nurse a midwife you have bonded with, and you have like who knows your like ideal birth scenario, and she caters to it, right? So like all the things that she has to do and check and all of that she does. Like mine, it was always really important to me to like be nursing the baby when we were checking things. Like I didn't want you to physically remove my baby for me, and she from me, and she knew all those things beforehand, skin to skin. And, it just like, it was a team that we had already built, and we already like had tons of trust that we got to build over months. So when you walk into a hospital, you're just like, you're meeting strangers in your birth bubble.
And that was another reason why I always wanted to birth at the same hospital. And I actually became friends with the nurses because I wanted the same team. So I almost bribed my charge nurse because I would buy them like breakfast and lunch and send them notes and be like, by the way, I'm coming. Specifically because I wanted that team and that village and that tribe, because it's scary when you have strangers and when you have people that you don't know coming in and being extremely invasive. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Definitely a lot.
The next time around was twins again. But we ended up losing Emma's twin halfway through the pregnancy. So at that point that was like peak COVID as well. So we got to plan a home birth because it was a singleton. But again, I moved like the middle of nowhere, and it was going to be 45 minutes from all hospitals and that kind of stuff. So we just, we planned that one. That one was like birth tub, like beautiful lights and all of that kind of stuff. And we ended up going into spontaneous labor. My midwife was like, oh, well, just call me when contractions pick up. And I was like, no, please come now. because this baby's coming fast. And she was here in, I think, less than 3 hours total. And my midwife had an hour drive or so. So that was fun. I was glad we were prepared for that one, because again, it was like when it happens like a whirlwind, you're just like trying to catch all the pieces as they're falling. Like it feels like chaos. But
Yes. Yes.
I had really learned to like just create my birth bubble and let the people that I trusted do everything around me. And that really made birth a much better experience.
Okay, so let's just get into it. And I do think there's another podcast because in the making that we should really consider, because Cashton was a twin too. And I don't think that it's talked about enough.
Yeah,
and I think
a
that
surviving
it
twin.
deserves to be one whole podcast, because the grieving of the loss and the celebrating of the child that is coming is very a very delicate, it's hard. I don't, not very many people can feel that or understand that. And then I also think that there's a lot of not enough people talking about how natural is it a miscarriage? Like, I don't even know how to qualify it. It is. It's a miscarriage, but also a successful birth at the same time. Like, it's so confusing to me, and people don't talk about it. Even my doctors would be like, "Yes, I'm so sorry," and gave me a big hug, but like that was it. That was the end conversation.
Yeah,
I think that we should definitely talk about it.
we really should.
Okay. Good. I would love to do that. So let's schedule a time when it's no babies around, and I think that we should totally, not that that's ever going to happen, but we should do that. Try to do that in the next couple of weeks. Okay. So here we go. I really want to get into your birth story of Archie and Sawyer, because I do know that it was very crazy, very difficult, but also beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So I want to hear your babies were breech.
Just
right?
baby A, which was the important one not to be breech, and he was. So
Okay.
yeah. I think
and is that important, because that baby is going to distend first, and then once you're already kind of just opened, so it's okay if that second, if baby B was okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, baby A has to make space, and the butt's bigger, so the butt needs to come out first. Sorry, backwards. Head first. Head is bigger. Head needs to come out first. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The head's bigger than the butt. Okay, so go ahead. Sorry.
I definitely want to preface it by saying that, like, because I have had the birth experiences that I have had, I was ready and had spent months preparing, like we're talking about. I was ready for a breech delivery. I was ready for twins. I was ready for a natural delivery after cesareans. I was ready for all that. I had been preparing for that for months. So when I showed up at the hospital was not ready for that at all to be happening that day. There was no like preparation or planning for that. I just showed up. So there was a lot of controversy, but in all grace, I am fully aware that they were facing a very unique and challenging situation, and they were falling back on their procedures and their policies. And I understand that. They just happened to like fully clash with my birth plan that I had spent months like preparing for. And my birth plan included a breech delivery of twins. So I was ready, and they were not. So that definitely caused the controversy that I'm going to talk about. But I had to find grace for that, because I do understand why they handled it the way they did. So I definitely don't like, no hate to my nurses or my doctor. I feel like they handled it the best way they knew how, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, like I said, we were totally prepared for this time. We decided to do, since it was a breech baby, and instead of being at home, we decided to do a birth center birth, which is 8 minutes down the road for me. So that was perfect. And they had everything we needed and extra supplies just in case, and we could have more team members, all the good stuff. So when I went into labor, I was totally prepared, super excited. I like went into labor slow, which doesn't always happen. A lot of times my water just breaks and then it's like chaos. But I could tell it was the day, like I was really excited. And so we checked in with the midwives and they said, oh yeah, you're 4 centimeters dilated. So we're expecting, like, we're planning to do this today. And so I actually came home and had some food with my kiddos, and like my family prayed over me and put hands on my belly and all the good, peaceful, birthy
Yeah.
vibes that I wanted. I got the whole experience. It was beautiful.
That's
And so my
awesome.
parents showed up in like a good, reasonable time. There was no like running late happening. And I just like
Yeah.
meandered over to the birth center whenever I was ready. And we got there and it was just like so beautiful. The room was all prepped for me. There was like a birth tub. There were steps I could like walk, stair step, speaking of
Wow.
initiating labor, all the good stuff, just all the good stuff. And so we did that for hours. And we like monitored babies every so often, all that kind of stuff. And everything was it was going perfectly. Everything's perfect. But like 9 p.m., I hit extreme exhaustion and I've never had that before. And so talking to the midwives, they were just like, okay, well, let's lean into it. Go take a nap. If you feel tired, we'll get some sleep. Hopefully that'll like get things really going, right? And so I slept and I slept like all night long and labor completely stopped. And I was so like appalled and like
Yeah.
mildly offended because that's never happened. And I was so ready to have my babies and it was all going so
Yeah.
perfectly. And it just like completely like full stop. No contractions, like I was feeling great. And um, so we just kind of had a team meeting and we were just like, well, I guess today's not the day. And
Yeah.
maybe it'll happen like later, that kind of thing. And we checked on babies. Everything was perfect. So I was not in labor and I was fine. And so
Yeah.
I decided to go home. And like when that happened, looking back, I can tell I had like a mild ache in my left side, but I had also been walking stairs all night long and I was hugely pregnant with twins.
Yeah.
So I kind of just dismissed it, but I got really sick to my stomach within like an hour or so of leaving the birth center and got home, took a nap, thought I would just like sleep it off, and woke up in the most excruciating pain I've ever felt in my life. And it was a kidney stone. And I knew exactly what it was because I've had it before. And it's the worst thing I've ever experienced. I would do labor and delivery 10 more times rather than have another kidney stone. It's
Insane.
excruciating. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I am like beyond managing my pain anymore. I like can't think straight. I'm like throwing up in pain. It's horrible, horrible. And so when I previously experienced it, I wasn't pregnant, so I knew what to take, what to do, like how to handle it. But I was not prepared to handle it pregnant. So there are pain medications you can't take while pregnant, and
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. I was just stuck in excruciating pain. So we decided to go to the ER, and I knew that there was a risk going to the ER because I was 37 weeks and 2 days pregnant. So full term, like ready to have babies anytime. And I knew they would want to do a cesarean. So I was really nervous and stressed out about that. And that was kind of like holding me back from going, but I didn't know what else to do. So I went and I get to the ER, the first ER, and I am telling them, I have a kidney stone. I need help with the pain. And they're like, you're having babies. You've got to leave. And I was like, no, no, I'm not in labor. I'm passing a kidney stone. I just need help with the pain and I don't know how to manage it. And they're like, back pain, you have back labor. You can't deliver here. And I'm like, I felt like I was in
Really?
Twilight Zone. Like I'm going round and round. I'm like, I'm not in labor. I promise. And they're like, you have to
Yeah.
leave. And so they're like, we'll schedule you a ambulance. And I'm like, well, I'd love to not pay for that. That would be
Right.
so I was like, we'll leave. And I really felt like God had just when I felt like at capacity with my pain and my, all of that, God really just gave gave me more. I don't know where it came from, but
Yeah.
I walked out of the ER somehow. I thought I was dying, but I was walking somehow. And we drove to the next ER.
They
And
didn't
this
even
time
send you to labor and delivery. They just
they
said
didn't
you
have
you
one.
can't be here. Okay.
That's why they were like, you gotta go. We can't do anything for you.
Oh
But
my God.
I was like, I swear I'm not in labor. Just help me with the kidney stone, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I understand, again, I understand why I was met with, but it was like so confronting and I was so sensitive at the
That had
time.
to have been so frustrating and
Yeah,
hard to
it was
manage.
very,
And like I would have been crying. I
yeah,
like
I
it
was.
just is
There,
like,
yep.
yeah,
Lots of
definitely have
crying.
lots of tears.
Yes. Yeah. The emotions were so raw and so real. It was chaos. So we go to the next ER and it wasn't the one I was supposed to go to. My midwife's like texting us. Again, I'm just like it's all a blur. I was just
Yeah.
in so much pain and Chris is trying to drive and we're trying to be safe and all of those things. So I get to the next ER and Chris has to drop me off this time because there's nowhere to park. So I'm walking myself in and I'm again having the same like I have a kidney stone. I think my kidney might be rupturing. Like, can you please help me? And
Yeah.
I'm also like fully aware of the fact that there are like pain medication seekers, people who go into the ER for
Right.
those kinds of things. So I'm like trying not to sound like a drug addict, but I'm
But
like,
you're
give me the
also
meds.
like 9 months pregnant, about to deliver a baby. Like,
Dying.
do they
Yes.
really think that you're a drug addict? Like,
Yeah. I don't, it was, yeah. So but I'm like, I know how it
but
sounds.
do you get like crazy calm when you're in like very like how do you get when you're in very stressful situations? Because I freak my
I'm
husband out.
calm. Yeah. I'm quiet. I think
Yeah.
I'm calm, quiet. I, I remember having my eyes closed for most of the experience because I was like, I'll look at you. I'm gonna tell you what I need. And then like I need to get in my own space
Yeah.
because I'm like trying to survive here.
So
So
because the reason why I asked is because when I was in the hospital and I was they didn't realize the level of sepsis that I was in because I was so calm in my delivery that they almost didn't believe me
yeah,
for like how much pain I was in because I was like, I'm in excruciating pain. And they're like,
yeah,
I guess I can
right,
understand the pain management seekers because you're like, I don't feel well. And they're like, well, what's wrong with you?
right.
Normal people cry and are all like hysterical.
Yeah. That's exactly that was my both times I went like when I went in for my first kidney stone and when I went in for this one, I'm like trying to use big words, like the right
Yeah.
words. Like I think an organ is rupturing. Can you please help me? That'd be great. Cool. But like that's not there's nothing else showing that. Like
Yeah.
and
They're like,
so
really?
yeah. And I honestly I feel like I leaned into it more on that one because I felt like I couldn't get anyone to take me seriously.
Yeah.
Um, they never believed me about the kidney stones, by the way. We
Wow.
went
That's
to,
crazy.
and of course, then, okay, well, I'll tell the whole story, then it makes more sense. But literally, I go all the way to birth telling them I'm not in labor, and they're like, oh, you're in labor. And I'm
You're
like, no, it's a kidney stone.
like pushing the babies out. You're like, I am not in labor. I still have a kidney thing.
Yes. So yeah, when I get to this ER, I'm like, okay, guys, like I'm dying. And they're saying, okay, we don't know where to put you. You're very pregnant, ma'am. Like we don't
Yeah.
know where you need to be, general like ER area, or do we take you to labor and delivery? I'm like, I'm not in labor, but wherever you feel comfortable putting me, that you will get me help the fastest. I'm comfortable going wherever you need to take me. And
Yeah.
so they're like, okay, we're gonna take you to labor and delivery. And I was like, okay, cool.
I mean,
I'm
your
not
body's under
delivering
so
today.
much stress. It probably put you into labor as well because you were so pregnant and all that. But being under that much stress of trying to be like, I'm sick. I
Yes,
don't feel good.
right.
Like, not to
Yep.
mention you're in a lot of pain. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, no, so they literally they finally get me in a wheelchair and I just like closed my eyes from the wheelchair to like in a hospital bed. I'm just like zoned into like survival mode. And I told Chris, I was like, I really don't think I'm having these babies today. I think I'm like, we're gonna take care of the kidney stone, we'll have babies next week or something. It was just so stressful that I didn't think I would actually go into labor because of how stressed I was, I guess. Um, but yeah, so we get up to the labor and delivery room and they're like, well, we got to put the baby monitors on you, get both the heartbeats. So they're putting straps right across my kidney. And I'm
Oh,
like, I can't, no, I cannot. And they're like, ma'am, you have to sit still. And I'm like, you can't put that there. Like I'm
it hurts.
dying. Like,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, what can we stop this for a second? The babies are fine. Can you help me with my kidney stone? And so because of that, I got labeled as like, I think combative's probably a too strong of a word, but I got labeled like problematic among all of the nurses and doctors. And they were just like,
Could you should have just showed them your Instagram page and be like, I am the least combative person.
it's so funny when people get the wrong perspective of me like that. I'm just like, okay, that's funny. But I'm literally, I'm telling them like, I need the kidney addressed. Like I need to know it's not rupturing. I need pain medication. I need something. And we'll do whatever you want. At this point, I probably would have said yes to a cesarean. Like I was out of it. It was bad. So
Painful.
it's so painful. And I knew that they weren't addressing that because of the babies. So that's why I'm like, take the babies then. I just need help. Like,
please. Yeah.
so we like, they get me settled and they're telling me like, oh, well, we can get someone to come do like an ultrasound on your kidney or your kidney stone at like 10 p.m. tonight, which is going to be like 6 hours. And then once we confirm it's a kidney stone, we can like give you the real medication. And I'm just like, you want me to sit here for 6 hours? I'm just like, I promise you, like, I promise it's a kidney stone. And so they're like, okay, well, we'll check your urine. So they do. And they're like, there's definitely blood in your urine, but there would be if you were in labor too. And I'm like, it's not labor. I promise. It's the kidney stone.
Thank God. Wait.
And so they're like bringing me heat packs and they're putting them on my lower back because they think I'm having back labor. And I've had back labor, which is excruciating.
You're
but
like,
it was
this
like
is my 12th. This is, what was that?
Yeah.
This is your, how many birth?
I've lost count. It was bad. Yeah. It was like, I'm just like, I can't, I'm a professional. Like, what do I tell you? Like, and I'm like trying to be as, you know, I have had a lot of babies. Like I do know what's happening with my body and you have to listen to me. And so everything they were doing was perfectly catered to me being in labor, which would have been so great if I was in labor, but I wasn't at the time. So
it wasn't very helpful.
They're like, yeah, it was, yeah.
They were not listening at all.
No, and I was trying to decide if I was going to overshare. They were really hesitant with the medication. So they were like, well, we can give you medication rectally if you really need it. And I'm like, okay. Yes, please help me, whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
But it felt like almost, and they never did, never gave me, it was almost like they were testing me or something to see if I was for real.
And they wouldn't,
for real.
And you wouldn't have taken the epidural.
Because they didn't offer it.
So you were that far. They kept saying you're in labor. That would have been my thing. I would have been like, okay, then give me give me an epidural. I get so angry because I can only imagine with what I was just through. I couldn't imagine going through something like that while pregnant and pregnant with twins. Like, forget it. I would have been so mean. I would have not been graceful.
Yeah. Well, I'm always like really intentional about being prayerful over my labors and delivery, even though it was unexpectedly in the hospital. Like I've always been really hopeful to have like a graceful birth, and thank God it has been, but usually it's because I'm surrounded by wonderful people and it makes it easy. This one was not so easy, but I literally was telling them, so there was some like background communication between them and my midwives, because my midwives have worked closely with this hospital. And so my midwife is, thank God, she's advocating for me. She's telling them like, forcing this woman into a cesarean would drastically limit her family size and her ability to continue to have children. And facing like the decision to stop having kids at that point was like, I wasn't ready to make that choice. And having a cesarean would have really, really limited our future birth. And I don't know if we have future birth plans, but I wasn't ready to make that choice at the time. So just having a cesarean for no reason was scary. It was terrifying.
So that's interesting. I want to ask you a question. So is there a limit on cesarean?
Yeah. So yeah, the biggest reason is because you have a scar that is constantly being reopened. And so you have to go through your whole pregnancy, like putting pressure on that scar, and you're at higher risk of uterine rupture. And so I had already had 2 cesareans, and both of them afterwards, I had to keep having my uterine scar checked to make sure that it was like holding up really well. And thank God it was perfect.
Wow.
but that puts your body at risk. Plus, just having abdominal surgery every 2 years
Yeah.
is its own risk. Um,
Yes.
it's a huge deal. It's anyway, and it's
That is
horrible
a big deal.
recovery. It's the worst recovery I've ever had in a pregnancy
Yeah,
or in a
I've never
delivery.
experienced it.
It's
I
just
can't imagine.
like, I mean, and it's like it's your whole lower body, everything hurts. It's all of the like postpartum recovery anyway, on top of major surgery recovery. And then you've got like newborns and kids climbing on you and like your body hurts. It's so hard. Walking's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will avoid it at all costs. Not all costs, but the basic costs. If we can
Yeah, as
avoid it,
much
we
as you
will.
can.
Yeah.
So when you, okay, so now let's get into it. So what happened?
Yeah. So there becomes this like majorly controversial moment where my midwives are saying like, hey, you need to not push this woman into cesarean. And the hospital is going like, hey, you can't deliver here.
And you're mid
Yes.
contraction?
So well, so I'm like kidney stone pain, right? And then I go into labor, my water just decides to break. And
You're under so much pain.
I was like, I honestly, every other time I've been so excited, and this time I was just like, oh crap! Like
Yeah.
I'm, I'm like committed to a hospital birth at this point because there's no going anywhere. Like I can't leave, and they literally
No.
asked me if I wanted to multiple times, and I was like, I physically cannot. I
Are they,
can't.
and they would let you leave mid labor? That is a surprise.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So they're talking about setting up the operating room for a cesarean, and I'm declining, all while also like managing kidney pain. But there was just really this kind of moment where I was like once my water broke, I took a few minutes to freak out, and then I was just like, okay, God, let's do this.
Yeah.
And I like immediately got up. I was like laid down, and I like got up on the bed, and I turned over on hands and knees, and I'm like like moving my body, praying, and like yeah, that was about it. That was the cycle.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
keep moving my body, keep praying. And there was another doctor who was supposed to come on shift who was apparently not VBAC friendly. She was the one I was supposed to be avoiding. So when my midwives showed up, they were like, "Hey, so you have nurses who think that you're a problem, doctors who think you're a problem, but the doctor coming's even worse. So we got to get this baby out like now." And yeah, so I
And
just
can
like,
they force you? Like, what do they do? Do they restrain you and like rip your baby out? Like, is
no,
that
thank God. No, it is a
feels
lot
very
more of
like
what,
Handmaid Tale?
yeah. Well, so we have they have forms. Basically, they make you sign forms that are like, I understand the risks. Here's what's going to be happening. And we have a parade. Okay, so that's the that's that's the situation. I'm like just have you heard that song? He is in the room.
Yes,
I can't remember
I
who it's by.
love that.
Okay, so that's
By
literally
Phil
going through my
Wickham.
head. Like I can't. I'm just
Yeah,
having to focus on the important things and like just recognizing. Wait, God is in the room with me. God
yeah,
knows, has known this whole time, like what the plan was, what was happening, and I am here now. It's happening.
right,
So
right.
I was just like push into everything I know about delivery, be quick about it, and like watch God do his thing. And so yeah, I did that. I was in full blown like focus mode. My midwives showed up and were like supporting me, just like keeping the peace basically, but they can't be hands on because they're not licensed, not hospital. Um, and so my doctor comes in and is like, hey, we're getting such and such ready. You have to deliver in the operating room in case we have to do an emergency cesarean. Um, so we're like trying to get all that prepped for you. And I'm just like vaguely listening to him and just like in labor, like just laboring. I'm like moving my
Yeah,
hips. I'm, you know, checking my body position, all the things I can do. And he is reminding me, okay, we have to do a bunch of paperwork because you are declining a cesarean, which is completely against hospital policy. So we need you to sign for that to say that you know the risks and you know what you're doing. And so I say, yeah, of course, come on. And so he comes in with this clipboard, and there's another nurse, and then my midwife's over here behind me, and then my husband's with me, and he's standing over me with this clipboard, and he's like reading the clipboard to me. He's telling me all of the risks, all of
Yeah.
the like uterine rupture and
Oh my God.
like hysterectomy risks and like hemorrhaging, and just like he's like reading me this super super scary risk list for attempting a natural delivery. And I am in birthing baby zone, and so he's
Yeah.
like shoved a pin in my hand, and he's like, sign your initials on each and every one of these like risky scary things I'm telling you. And so I'm like, I had to roll over to be able to sign. And so I'm like in position to birth a baby, and he's got this clipboard in my face, and he's like reading it to me, and I'm like just signing it blindly because I'm in so much pain. And a contraction comes, and I'm like, here, take this. So I like shove the pin back, and I'm like, I have a contraction, like leave me alone for a
Yeah.
second. And so during this contraction, I just like push, like full blown bear down
Yeah.
push. I don't like to birth like that because it's so
Yeah.
much more stress on your body. Like I would prefer to do it slowly and to do it like let my body do most of the work, all of that. But that was not the scenario. It was like get the baby out
See,
now.
I never had that experience to let my body do the work. It was
Yeah,
always like get it out in as little of pushes as possible,
yeah,
which is like very hospital esque
yeah, yeah.
birthing. And it's very I couldn't breathe a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Like it's very it's hard,
Right.
which is, and I didn't know that you could just let your body do the work.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, so
Fetal
you bear
ejection
down.
reflex. Yeah. So I, yeah, like red face. So my midwife got a video of it. So I'm like red face pushing, like full blown. But for some reason, the doctor who was like clipboard in my face turned to say something to the nurse, and he missed it. Like he didn't see that I was pushing. He didn't realize that I was like actively pushing a baby. And so that contraction passes, and he's like saying something to the midwife. And from what I understand, he was saying like, I think we probably should start getting that room ready. Like it was like very casual, like he had no idea. And so then he turns back, and my contraction is like ending, and I'm like catching my breath, and he's like, here you go, and hands me the pen again. So I'm back. I signed like two things, and he's back at it again with the like death and bleeding and
Oh my goodness.
yeah, all of the scary words. And um another contraction comes, and I like shove the pin back in his hand again. And that might have been the time when he turned. He was like, okay, maybe we should get things ready. And I'm like pushing the baby out. And so the second push, and I'm literally like, I'm like, well, baby's coming. So, and he freaks out. The whole room freaks out. And I couldn't tell you because I was in like the birth zone. At some point, literally 12 to 16 people like come in the room while I'm birthing. And I was in the zone, so I didn't even see when and how, but they were like rushing carts in and like heating lamps and like all kinds of stuff. It was just like an eruption of chaos. And the doctor throws on gloves. And by that point, I've already like reached down, and I'm like ready to catch baby A, who's coming out breech and coming out perfect and simple. And it was beautiful. And so the doctor like reaches over past my hands, like get out of the way, and grabs the baby. And so we're like wrestling over the baby. And so he like puts the baby up on my lap, and I'm still hugely pregnant because there's another baby. And so that was a different experience for me because before I could like get baby all the way to my chest, and this time I couldn't. And so he's across my lap, and so there's just like a few minutes of peace. But during this few minutes, so my baby's crying, he's
He
perfect.
hands you the paper. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
We were beyond that, thank God, because I had thrown it at him by that point. Um, but he's just like, well, yeah, you did the thing, you did it, you know. But he keeps trying to clamp the cord, and I'm just like, no, like I was
Yeah,
decided on
wait.
like cord clamping, like no. And so I feel like I fight for like 10 minutes. Oh hey, what are you doing? I got a baby under me. Um, I feel like I fight this whole time just to convince him not to clamp the cord. And so we
Wow.
we like argue for like 10 minutes about it. And I keep I couldn't like articulate the words because I was I was,
Yay, that hair.
yeah, outside
Hi.
baby. You dirty.
Hello.
You gotta go. Say hi. Oh, hi. I bet you gotta go. Gotta go outside. You too. Gotta go outside. They're filthy.
That's awesome.
In the best way, the best like spring weather dirtiness.
Yep.
So I spend the like whole 10 minutes, I feel like, just telling this doctor, like, we're okay. And that's all I could articulate to be like, hey, leave my baby alone. We're good. Stop
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so finally we clamp the cord and they scoop baby up to my arm. And I kind of have this moment where I'm like they're telling me you need to get baby B out. And I like was, I guess, anticipating letting my body do it. But
Yeah.
then I kind of like realized, I'm like, wait, I'm obviously fully dilated. Like,
Yeah.
could I just push this baby out like
Right.
right now
Yeah.
without the, anyway, so I tried and baby came right out with one push.
Wow.
And so I was like, it was just different than all the other ones because the other ones you got to like wait for your body to be ready and make sure you're fully
Yeah.
dilated, all that kind of stuff. But we were ready, so we just did
You
the
were
thing.
ready.
And baby B came right out, and he was really quiet. And my placenta and everything came out at the same time, so there was no like follow up placental delivery or any of that, which I appreciated because I was pretty done having doctors in my space at that point. But
Yes.
he was perfect and he was quiet. And I was a little nervous because of how
Yeah.
quiet he was. But he was perfect. So he's
Oh,
still to this
that's
day is
so
quieter
good.
than his brother.
Oh, he's just quiet.
Yeah, he's just
Just a
quiet.
quiet baby.
Yeah. But
That is insane.
yeah, it was, yeah. And then that one, they were like, okay, we're going to clamp the cord right now. And then that
And you're
was a
like,
huge
no.
battle for me because I'm like, it's we're done. What do you mean? Like, why? Just wait. And
Yeah.
then he had a whole thing about being concerned that the blood was going to flow back out of the baby into the placenta, like the placenta was going to rob the baby of the blood, which is not how that works. So I'm really confused why that was. Anyway, so they clamped his early, and he was
He just
like,
had to win a battle. He just had to
yeah,
win a battle.
I don't
Because
know.
I never experienced that. I got very lucky having the same doctors deliver me, and they all knew wait to clamp, like wait on cord
Yeah,
clamping, always have the golden hour, always have the
yeah,
skin on skin, like wait on everything. Um, like no like vaccines, no, not like I fought all of that fight in the beginning.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so they
And
were just prepared. And
yes,
like I had the reputation of she'll be really nice to you if you're nice, she'll be really bitchy if you're not. Like it just is.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was the consensus.
Yes, that's totally fair. And so I think that was the biggest thing. I obviously hadn't fought any of that fight yet. I hadn't aligned or arranged anything. So they were falling back on policy. And
Yeah.
that it was so hard because then they're checking my records and they're going, oh, you had gestational diabetes, which I did fail a gestational diabetes test, but we treated it the rest of my
Right.
pregnancy
I
through
remember
diet.
that.
And it went
Yes.
fine. My blood sugar stayed fine. It was all fine. But because of that, they started pushing, like, we have to keep testing your baby's blood sugar to make sure the blood sugar is fine. And the blood sugar test that they were testing, they were looking for a specific hospital policy, like um, blood sugar level, not the standard medical understanding of what is healthy and safe. They had like a higher level they expected it to be for babies, which again, that's not an argument you want to have like right after birth. That's the argument you have beforehand when you're
Yeah.
preparing. And I didn't get to
Yeah.
have that. So we ended up stuck in the hospital for an extra several days because they were kept testing my baby at like he hadn't
So,
eaten for 3 hours, so his blood sugar was low.
oh my
And then instead of letting me nurse him, they gave him glucose immediately because it was like, oh my gosh, it's lower than our policy. Not lower, like dangerously low, just lower than our policy allows. So they gave him glucose immediately. I'm like, why would you not let me feed my baby? You knew he hadn't
God.
eaten
Yeah.
in 3 hours. Like,
Right. Just let me. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. See, I'm wondering, is your hospital a blue state? Were
Are
you
we
in
a
a
blue
blue state
state?
or are you purple?
Yes, Chris has blue state.
See, Florida is very red and
Mm,
we don't have to fight those fights. And I wonder if that's because if that has to do with political affiliation. Ask Chris what he thinks. I wonder if
yeah.
that if that reflects in hospital policy because I remember when we had Kaya, we had a very difficult time. I had to change my doctor because they wanted me to get a COVID shot. And
Mm,
that's a whole nother controversy. This is
yeah.
another like big thing. But I
Hmm.
refused. I'm like, if you won't let me take Advil as a pregnant woman,
Hmm.
then I'm not getting a vaccine that's been around for a year. I'm just not. So, and the doctor would not deliver me. And then when I changed doctors and after Trump, all of that, I was able to, I didn't get questioned again. And the hospital was like very, they didn't ask those certain questions. Like they were very, I guess maybe had been used to a lot of conservatives being like crazy anti that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but I wonder if that's reflective, if that makes a difference in like
I have
hospital
no
policy,
idea. I
because
was
I saw in your stories that they threatened you. Did they threaten you with keeping your babies, or they threatened you with your babies being taken away or something if you didn't name them?
so
There was something
they
that
were
was very
forcing, yeah, they
controversial.
were forcing us to stay in the hospital. And there was kind of just this conversation. They were like, you have to stay. And it was over his blood sugar, over the baby's blood sugar. And we were telling them, listen, we're going to go home, which is 5 minutes from here. We have a follow up midwife home visit in a matter of hours. She'll be there first thing in the morning. We have
Mhm.
home tests. I'm not a first time mom, I'm pretty experienced with newborns. And I know all of the warning signs to look out for a baby who has low blood sugar. And we have a feeding schedule, a lactation consultant. We have a feeding schedule intentional of every 2 hours to make sure that his blood sugar never gets low, or he doesn't, instead of feeding on demand, being intentional about feeding him so that his blood sugar is taken care of. And I was like, we have a whole plan, just let us leave. And they said no. And so there's just this really awkward, controversial moment. Also, this conversation's at midnight, the day that I delivered a baby, and I'm exhausted and gross. And
Yeah.
I have like a manager standing over me in my hospital room, and I'm still naked. And like, it's just so vulnerable, right? And I'm having
Yeah.
to like advocate for myself. And so there's just this moment where she says that after we've like explained our care plan, which I thought was really well put together. And she says, no, the doctor says you can't leave. And my husband goes, you can't keep us.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, we can't keep you. No, you're right. We can't keep you. And it was just such a like threatening tone. And she may not
Yeah.
have intended to be threatening, but it felt threatening. And so there's just this like clipboards and manager lady telling us like, well, we can't keep you, but like, and then
There's
they go into this
alternatives
whole,
basically.
yes, this whole lecture about how they are trying to keep my baby alive by monitoring us and keeping us in the hospital, and that I am risking my baby's life by leaving, which is like perfect setup for we're going to call CPS if you try to leave. They didn't say that, but that was how it felt. Like that was how like
Totally.
controversial it
Totally.
felt. And then they're telling me you can leave with baby B. You guys can go. And I'm like, I'm not leaving my baby. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, Chris and the baby can leave. And I'm like, my husband's not going to take my newborn and go home. What do you mean? Like, and so it's just such a, oh, it was so hard. And I've talked to nurses since then, not my nurses, but different nurses. And they were like, what did the hospital have to benefit? Why do you think that the hospital was threatening you or forcing? And I'm like, oh, I'm just telling you what happened. Like, that's
Yeah.
why I felt threatened. That's why I know that they were falling back on their policies again. Also, we couldn't pick a name. So that was another big thing, a whole drama. So you had mentioned all the things that you declined, and that was me too. It was like I declined a cesarean, I declined eye drops, I declined vaccinations, I declined vitamin K, I declined all these things. I was
And you
trying
just
to
make
decline.
them mad.
Yes.
That's really, and I had already gone through that. And that's why I made friends with the charge nurse and I had to totally shift and experience. But
Yeah.
I had a similar experience with Kaya because I had given birth with a fever because I had labored for like 72 hours. So I was induced, I had labored, I was in crazy pain. They couldn't, and I kept refusing a C-section.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you have no medical reason to give me a C-section. I am not getting a C-section. I refuse. I was walking around like I was doing all of the things.
Yeah.
And I think they just wanted me out of the hospital, but I was like, they just had me there. My doctor was really great. She was super advocate. It was different because she was Christian and her and I bonded on that.
Yeah.
But they did not want to let me leave. And it was like, they wanted to keep Kaya an extra 48 hours. And they said, well, you can go, but you can leave your baby here. And I said, and you can go kick rocks. Like, that's not happening. My husband can get very scary.
Yeah.
And he was like, we're leaving with the baby now. And we didn't get like that demeaning tone. We got a lot of eye rolls, but I know exactly, not exactly, because I didn't get the demeaning tone, but I know what you feel, how you feel when they have that almost like element. It's that element of like, well, we can, like, it's like I don't know if it's a power move.
Power trip is what it felt like.
What it is, but it's like, are you seriously trying to threaten me and my baby? Like, I have a pediatrician appointment. I'm taking my baby like here. I'm being released to their care. I like,
right.
Relax. My baby's fine. Yeah, I don't understand when nurses ask that either, where it's like, well, what did the hospital have to gain? Like, there's thousands of things that the hospital had to gain, but I think the core issue is the fact that the hospital has these just outlandish, crazy standard policies that they don't, for no reason other than to keep their funding and liability claims low. And they just don't even go case by case. Like, to me, that's a problem. That's a real problem with like an overarching systemic issue with a lot of bureaucracy. So that's my soapbox.
No, literally policies can't be one size fits all. We're different people with different bodies, with different experience levels. Policies have to be able to adapt to people who, if I walk in and I want to decline things, you have to let me. That's how
how the United States of America is supposed to work. Like, I'm sorry, there's freedom for a reason.
And I understand that I was certainly in a scenario where it's like, okay, if you don't want to follow our hospital policies, then don't birth here. And I would have very much not birthed there if that had been an option. But then once I was like trapped. And we had like, even the name thing was this big controversy because we were there for like 3 days or so. I can't remember, but they had nurse after nurse coming in and giving us like, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to have to go all the way out to Richmond, 2 hours away within 7 days. Like, and all of that kind of stuff. We had phone calls coming into my hospital room at all hours trying to discuss with us, like, have you named them yet? And I'm like, listen, I'm trying, but God names my babies and he hasn't given me an answer yet. So I don't know what to tell you. And so we literally were just like, okay. And I think they named them like baby Sellers A and baby Sellers B. And they were like, well, we're sending off their names anyway. And you're going to have to go get them like revoked, like changed. And so I was like, okay, that's what we're going to have to do. And I know, again, like those are hospital policies and that's not that big a deal. But it turned out that's not even the truth anyway. You just send in forms. You don't have to go into the office or travel anywhere or any of that. And I was also still actively dying from a kidney stone, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Did we ever get that fixed? What happened?
So no, but I was allowed to take Tylenol then. Like, I could do the Tylenol ibuprofen thing after I wasn't pregnant anymore. So I was able to take Tylenol. But no, they finally came in some crazy hour and did an ultrasound on only my kidneys and only my bladder. Not my ureter, not the tube connecting between them where my kidney stone definitely was, like on its way down. They didn't scan that for some reason. And they're like, your kidney looks irritated and like swollen, but it would after birth anyway. And there's no stone in your bladder. And I'm like, are you still telling me there's no kidney stone? Like, you don't believe me? You still don't believe me? I'm like still vomiting in pain. Like, it's horrible. And so, but at that point I could take Tylenol.
You're trying to fight all these fights.
It was really hard not being believed. And I know why. I get it, but it's just like, it was so hard. And so I have this picture of my birth, like right after both babies are born. I think they're like examining my placenta on a table beside me. And there's, no joke, 12 people, like strangers, standing in this room. I'm naked with just like I have just my hospital gown, like kind of mildly covering me.
Oh
And
my
there's just
gosh.
an army of people just watching, like just sitting there witnessing the whole scenario. And I'm just like, okay, I would not have picked that ever. But
No.
I am really hopeful that somebody learned something about breech birth. And I had so many people come in later and say, like, hey, I was actually out in the hallway and I had my head in the door and I watched your birth, which is crazy. But that they were saying, like, I had never seen a breech delivery before, much less of twins. Like, and I'm like, I'm so glad you got that experience.
I'm so happy for you to experience this.
Honestly, I am, because I want real birth to be, so my midwife and I had a conversation about that in front of one of the nurses. And my midwife was like, I'm so glad those people got in that experience, that they got to actually see that, because there are doctors nowadays who have never seen a vaginal breech delivery of a twin, and those kinds of things. And my nurse literally turns around and she goes, well, we don't want them to get the wrong impression of what breech birth is. And I was just so floored by that, because I'm like, that was breech birth. What do you mean? Like, I literally birthed a breech baby. That was breech
Yeah.
birth. What do you mean a wrong impression of what breech birth is? But there's this whole like idea of how dangerous it is, right? And
Yeah.
how so many things could happen. And, that the fear behind it keeps people from getting trained and having experience. And the lack of training and experience makes it scary.
Right.
So
And
now
there
everybody
are
has experience.
elements of risk for
Yeah.
sure, right?
As with
And
cesarean. Yeah.
as with cesarean, there are elements of risk. What are those risks? Because there are so many breech babies, but there is a lot of fear, because I remember she was breech up and until like the week before I delivered, and so they were heavily talking cesarean, but I'd already gone through quite a bit with my doctor that there's no, I've already been through two babies vaginally. It's just not happening. My like
Mhm.
no.
I'm
So
so
she had
proud of
already
you.
known. Well, yeah,
I'm so
no,
proud of
I'm
you,
not
girl.
kidding. I'm like, I said, it's a practical thing. Like, I need to be up walking around
Mhm.
for my other children. Like, I don't have help. I don't have, like, I have somebody that comes in and helps me clean my house, but I don't
Mhm.
have like any kind of night nurses. I don't have family
Right.
close by. My husband works full time. Like, it's me and my babies. And
Yeah.
so I need to be fully functioning like as soon as possible. Like, I don't
Yep.
have that 7, 8 weeks. And I don't think anybody does. I'm not saying that. But if I had the choice, I'm not going to elect to have a cesarean, because
Right.
it just scares me. But it's also like, I feel like my body was meant to do it a certain way. And I just want to do everything I possibly can in my power to make that happen.
Yeah. So you
Not
said a
to
phrase.
negate anybody else's cesarean. My
No.
mom had me a cesarean, and she still to this day has pain.
Mhm.
And she still to this day has said that, like, it was an emergency cesarean because my forehead was pushed against her pelvic bone. So she had to have it. But and I don't know if there was, she didn't know if they a lot of people don't know that there are midwives and all of that that can help them do things
Yeah.
naturally as well.
Yeah.
Um, but knowing that experience with my mom, I just had refused. I just did not want to have
Yeah.
a. Sorry. Okay, so there are risks though with breech birth.
Yes.
What are those risks? Just,
So hold
just
on. I want to say something important. I want to call out a phrase you used that I think is so important for moms to know. You used the phrase medically necessary. And when I had my first pregnancy, I didn't know that wasn't a term I knew. So if the doctor was telling me to do it, in my mind, it was medically necessary. Like, why would a doctor tell me to do things that aren't medically necessary? And that's why
oh
we
yeah,
ended up with a failed induction. But medically necessary is such an important phrase. And that is a phrase I started asking my doctors after that second cesarean. I was started asking, like, okay, is this medically necessary? And then I was so surprised to hear over and over, no, actually, it's not. This is policy, or no, it's not medically necessary. We just think it's best, or we would advise it, but no, it's not medically necessary. And so once I like got to the root of that phrase that you're using, it's such a good one. It changed everything for my birth. And it was like the foundation I got to build my birth experiences around when I was meeting with my midwives, because it was like, give me the medically necessary information and
Mhm.
then give me your advice and like what you would think would be good for my space and my birth and all of that. But like, I need to know what's medically necessary first. Like, I need to trust that you're not going to encourage me to do something that isn't medically necessary.
I think that that's so good to have a conversation about. And I'm glad that you called that out because it is key in everything that I do when it comes to being a mom, when it comes to giving birth, pregnancy, and with my pediatrician. And I learned a lot of that because of what's going on like in the Maha movement with all of the vaccines and all like the food. I've been a huge believer in a lot of like our food supply ever since I was like 19. I've just been researching it, is just so crappy that I really don't have a huge belief in big pharma. Like I'm a big
Yeah.
believer that we can heal ourselves. We food, like the right food, the right things can be a healer. Prayer, I'm a big believer in all of that. Now, I think the biggest things that I condition my doctors to know about me, and I will literally change my doctor if they don't, is what is medically necessary.
Hmm.
Baby first, mom second. I always
Hmm.
want to make sure that baby is healthy, baby is satisfied, then mom. And then I also, when it comes to any type of vaccinations or anything with the kids, because I do some vaccines. I do.
Yeah.
Um, I want to know what's the longest scale that I can go, not for school
Yeah.
policy, for the health of my baby to make
Yeah.
sure that they're protected. Because I don't want to deny science either.
Yeah.
I want to, like, what's been proven to work,
Hmm.
great. But what's the longest I can wait? Because I
Yeah.
think that we jam all of this together in babies. So understanding those kinds of conversations with the baby. And then I
Yeah.
love that you called with the doctors. I love that you called out, then give me your opinion. Tell me
Yes.
what's medically important. Then I want to know from your experience as
Mhm.
a doctor and a medical professional doing this every day, what is your opinion?
Exactly.
And I won't hold you to it. I say that a lot. I won't sue you. I won't hold you to it. Just tell me what you believe because
Yeah.
they're so scared of being like malpractice suits.
Yep.
Tell me what you think would work.
Yeah.
I say that all the time. I'll
No,
sign
it's so
something. Just give me
important.
your opinion.
Yes. Yeah, it really is so important. And having that's why I've gravitated towards midwives, because I have been met with so much more grace and like patience with my perspective on things, because we don't vaccinate, but if we did that, we would say, "Hey, give me the widest vaccine schedule, like spread it out as much as possible," because I
Mm-hmm,
think the biggest risk comes from cramming them all together. But
mm-hmm,
we homeschool and we do all these things, so we get to choose how we
right.
live our lifestyle.
Mm-hmm,
But yeah, medically necessary. What's your opinion? Will you work with me on my wants and desires? That's,
mm-hmm.
can I trust you to not? When I look back on my first birth, it was literally Labor Day weekend. No, it was the first one. No, the girls, the twins, when they said, "Oh, well, we're gonna do the cesarean today." There was like nothing, not one single reason to do the cesarean except that it was Memorial Day weekend. That's when it was.
Convenient.
And it was like the Friday before, and she was probably like,
Going
"I don't
away.
want you going to labor over the weekend."
Yeah.
So yeah, and I trusted her that that was what we needed to do. And then later I'm like, "Oh, we didn't need to do that. Babies were fine." She just probably didn't want me to go into labor while she was on a lake somewhere.
Yeah. She wanted the credit for your deliveries. No, I'm sorry. She probably that. I'm sorry. That
I don't
probably
know that
wasn't
that's
accurate.
fair, but it feels fair. So
I don't
I
know.
do want
As
to.
my husband says, being a doctor, I mean, those types of things, not saying that doctors are bad. I very much adore and appreciate doctors out there that actually uphold their oath, definitely are there to help and protect us, much smarter than me in many ways, completely. But it is a business, and we do have to understand that there are business practices behind there that they like. I remember having this big conversation with my OB, and the head of the thing, because in the head of the practice, um, because they had an internal issue, and one of the partners left, and it was a big thing. And I was like, how much of a business are your deliveries? Like how much does this really impact the decisions that you make? And he had literally said to me, he's like, there's a reason why the partner is leaving. They're not getting paid enough. And like they would get paid per delivery. I mean, it's a business and they should be, of course, compensated for what they're doing, but the insurance and them, like, there's a whole element that I just don't even know about, that I think certain decisions are of course made because of that and they benefit from it. So
Yeah.
that to be said.
No, exactly. My poor midwives are out here like living birth to birth, like paycheck to paycheck, and like all they want to do is help moms. So I'm like, you know what?
Yeah,
You're the one I want to meet with. Like, you're the one.
exactly. Yeah. Um, okay, I do
Oh.
need to go downstairs.
Okay.
I'm so
Sorry.
okay. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mommy's, yeah, it's mommy's mic. Go show daddy. Oh, yes. I'm so sorry. Got owie.
Oh.
It's okay.
I am so lucky to have you in my life, and I'm so proud of you. And I'm so proud of all of the work that you're doing and everything that you've done for us and who you are as a mom, and just as just a disciple, and just in general, you just really are an incredible human being. And I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself and staying true to who you are and protecting those babies. And you are so inspiring in just your strength, even, not just for moms to have home births or anything like that, but just to stand true and know what they want and to take the time to get to know what they need. They should take your course. But also just genuinely being able to advocate for yourself, even if it's just with your home team or with doctors or just in your daily life. Knowing to advocate for yourself is critically important as a human, but even more so as a mom. And I think that you're a shining example and an inspiring example of how we should be advocating for ourselves with grace and kindness and gratitude, but standing true in what we know. And I'm so proud of you and lucky to have you in my life.
Thank you so much. You are, honestly, I'm so thankful to know you. And I was right in the midst of all of my business drama and everything, trying to learn how to kick off a business and everything. I'm like, you're like, I'll provide resources and education, and you know what? You want to do a speaking event? I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. And I'm so thankful. Along all of it, there was a point I'm talking to you, I'm like, I'm so tired and I just want to have these babies. And you're like, you know what? Take your break. Do whatever makes your heart happy. And so anyway, there's no one else I'd rather do business with, and much less than that, much more than that.
Oh.
I'd much rather, I was gonna say, I'm thankful to have you as a friend.
Yes.
And
me too.
a business partner.
Yes, me too. I'm so lucky to have you. And I have this baby asleep and the baby downstairs.
Perfect.
So I'm gonna go make dinner. But thank you for sharing your story with us. I feel like E! News, where it's like, we've got the exclusive interview with Amanda Sellers on her birth story.
Yay!
So I will share it with you, and you will post it to your things, and we will meet here again and talk about twin.
Yes.
We should talk about twin births.
We need to talk about postpartum too.
We have so many things.
So
We should make this a series and talk about all things pregnancy and motherhood.
Yeah.
But for now, this was a beautiful story. I am so proud of you. I'm glad your kidneys are healed now, right?
Totally fine now. Thank God.
Okay, good.
It took a few weeks, but we're good.
Okay, good. I will talk to you later.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.